there's no wrong way to feel.
Or
but,
to
like,
eat a Reese's.
What?
There's no wrong way to eat a Reese's.
Is that a thing?
It is a thing.
Yeah,
I've never heard that before.
They used to have those commercials like, in the early 2000s, like, there's no wrong way to eat a Reese's. And, like, it would be, like, Dracula, like, putting 2, like, teeth in it. Or, like, you know, anyway, that was...
I'm with you.
I mean,
I remember
you
those.
probably don't want to eat it with the wrapper. That seems like the wrong way to eat it, so...
Very fair.
Possibly, yeah. Maybe, so the commercial was wrong.
Hello. Do you want to play a game?
What's your favorite scary movie?
Be afraid. Be very afraid. See dead people.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Here's Johnny.
The power of Christ compels you! The power of Christ compels you!
Whatever you do, don't fall asleep.
Welcome to Talking Horror with Jamie and Nikisha.
Hi, I'm Jamie.
And I'm Nikisha, and this is Talking Horror with Jamie,
And Nikisha.
where we share our love for spooky things and talk horror through the lens of human behavior. Welcome, everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
We're all through with our lenses.
We're ready to talk about everything horror. It's going to be a good time today.
Wait, Nikisha, what did you say? We're going to what today?
Horror. We're going to talk horror.
You're going to talk to me?
Ooh!
That was not... Wow. That's maybe the best reaction I've ever got from something so stupid. This is great. This is great news for me.
This is also a very nice harmony, I will say, between Jamie and I. Unplanned.
That's true. It did sound nice.
Yes, I like it. Same vowel and everything. Love
Yeah.
it. Well, yes, Brian has let the cat out of the bag. Today we are talking about
The
or
hand
out of the bag.
The hand out of the backpack.
I got it. I'm with you.
We
I'm
got
with
there.
you.
We got there.
We got there. Hand out of the bag. We are talking about the 2023 Australian supernatural horror film, Talk to Me. So this movie is directed by Danny and Michael Philippou in their feature film directorial debut, and it stars one Sophie Wilde, Alexandra Jensen, Joe Bird, Otis Dahanji, and Miranda Otto. Now, heavy spoilers for everything that is Talk to Me, and Jamie, run us through all of those triggers, please.
Surely. This has a lot of possession and spirits and like seances. So as a whole, if you don't like that, this might not be for you. There are also some insides on the outside. Anybody like eyeballs in your head? Keep it that way. Otherwise, this might not be a thing for you.
Anybody like eyeballs? This is fantastic.
There's also like visuals of extreme graphic self-harm. There's references to suicide. There's a lot of like hospital theme imagery. Feel like that's important to name too, just because some folks don't like looking at hospitals or being in them or being reminded.
Very
of them.
fair. Yes.
There's a scene where a person makes out with a dog. I just felt like I wanted to say that.
Yeah, if you're not into toe sucking.
Oh yeah, there's some toe sucking.
Oh. Yeah, if that's not your bag, maybe
there's-
try to skip that.
Yeah, that, I would
there's a lot.
even say that crosses the border into just foot sucking, you know?
Yes. Yes, we're
boy.
going to get into all of that. I don't think there's anything else. Yeah, does that pretty much cover it as far
I
as
think so.
trigger warnings? Yes. Grand.
Oh, animal harm?
Oh, yes.
Oh yes.
The kangaroo.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And we talked about mentions of suicide, maybe? Yes? Okay. Great. Fantastic. Yes. Well, all of that is in there, guys. So pick carefully if this is what you would like to have your eyeballs look at. So we're gonna pun intended. So before we get into everything that is Talk to Me, producer Brian, please give us some words.
Sure. Before we start, we are covering Talk to Me because A24, the production company, the distribution company, has agreed to SAG-AFTRA's terms. So this is not struck material, so we feel super comfortable doing A24 movies. Love that about them. But for us, you can follow us wherever you want to follow us in terms of we're on Instagram, Twitter, or X, whatever we're calling it now. We're on Threads, and then of course we're on TikTok. Check us out on all those places. And of course we're on YouTube. You can watch us there. Hi YouTube. Yeah, shake my hand. Talk to me, YouTube. So yeah, that's all I had to say about that. Back to you, Nikisha.
Oh, fantastical. Well, guys, have you watched anything recently? Done any spooky things?
Nikisha?
Let me know. Yes.
We have watched
God.
so much since our last Sinister episode.
So excited. Tell me all about it.
Jamie, why don't you tell her what we watched last evening? It was a first experience for me.
Uh-oh.
It is, what's it called? The House on Haunted Hill. I wanted to get the name right because it sounds like The Haunting. It also makes me think of Haunting of Hill House, but those are not the properties. This was House on Haunted Hill, which is the remake that came out in like late 90s, early 2000s. Yeah. And boy, oh boy, what a time. I have seen that movie so many times on TV, and Brian had never seen it.
No.
Yeah.
We had actually previously mentioned it on our the Blackening episode because we talked about spoiler alerts for House on Haunted Hill for a moment, but Taye Diggs is one of the final men from that movie.
Oh,
so,
right. So, okay.
But don't worry, the movie's so bonkers that spoils 0% of it. But if you follow me on Letterboxd, you'll see that my review is this was definitely made in 1999. Yeah, honestly, the truest 2-pack I could ever suggest is this and 13 Ghosts.
Really?
Is made by the same production company, and this was their first movie. This was their breakout from Dark Castle. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
This movie is insane. It has over-the-top performances. It's not really that scary. It's just like that, like, it's poorly paced, but like I kind of also had a good time because I'm a sucker for like late 90s, early 2000s, like horror movies like this.
Yes.
You know, you have like, it's like Taye Diggs,
This
Famke
cast is
Janssen, Jeffrey
nuts.
Rush.
Oh, wow.
Chris Kattan is in this movie.
Do you know, you talking about that reminds
Veronica
me...
Vaughn. Veronica Vaughn.
Oh my God.
I was thinking, and I was like, "That's not her name," but then you said it, and then I was like, okay.
No, that is not her name.
There you go. It definitely reminds me of you talking about late 90s, early 2000s. What is it? House of Wax with like what Paris Hilton?
Oh my God, that
we
was another
almost-
one that I was like,
we
we should
almost watched
also.
that.
I would watch
Yeah.
this
Yes.
one. I was just in a mood for like early 2000s horror, something that was like this. There is no stakes. It's just whatever
Pure chaos.
thing they think is scary. Yeah. Pure
So
chaos.
it's Veronica Vaughn's real name is Bridget Wilson. But also Peter Gallagher's in the movie and Ali Larder is in the movie. This is like pure late 90s, early 2000s fuel. Like if you inject it into my blood. Like this is the feeling that I get when I assume some people watch like 80s movies. You know what I mean? Inject it into my blood. It's not good, but it was a delight.
Well, sometimes you need those kinds of movies, right? It's just like there are no stakes. You know it's going to be terrible, but you know you're going to be there for like a good ride along the way, you know?
And watching these movies that Jamie grew up watching that I've never seen is a true joy for me. Like 13 Ghosts, that one. We watched another one, Urban Legend. Like, One Urban Legend's like one of my favorite 90s horror movies at this point. But
Wait, can I just read the other movies that Dark Castle has made? At least like the early ones, because it really all the movies that we mentioned are all made by Dark Castle. So it started
wow.
with House on Haunted Hill, then 13 Ghosts, then Ghost Ship, then Gothica, and then House of Wax. Like, they really picked some doozies. There's some of these that I have never even heard of that, like, I never saw, like The Reaping. Apparently they made the sequel to House on Haunted Hill because they had to go back for some reason.
Right.
But the biggest surprise that they produced is Orphan and Orphan First Kill.
Which are, like, great, incredible films.
It's like, what? How did we get here? But, like, okay.
Listen,
but
it's a journey. We got there.
Yeah.
It's super journey. I can't wait for... Have you not watched House of Wax, Brian?
I've never seen it, no.
Yeah. Please watch that. We must discuss. That was one that was always on TV that I would see a lot
I remember the promos where it was all about, like, watch Paris Hilton die in House of Wax. Like, that was their marketing campaign, which is wild. And I hope that she got, like, therapy for that, because that seems really messed up.
Right. And truly, it's like everybody just wanting to see her fake death in this movie. My God. Truly crazy. Well, sorry, what were you going to say?
I also have binged Friday the 13th, part 3 through part 6.
Obsessed.
So
I watched 6 with Brian. That was the only one I watched.
So I watched so just so everyone knows, we're on Friday the 13th in October of this year. We're covering Friday the 13th, chapter 7, New Blood. And so I was kind of preparing for that. And I watched part 3. I watched part 4, the final chapter. Part 5, A New Beginning. And then part 6, we watched Jason Lives together. And these are not good movies. And like you know, that's a relative term. And we'll talk about this more when we talk about that. But I have to tell you, I have been having an absolute blast with these movies. I'm learning so much about the Friday the 13th franchise, just in terms of, like, I didn't know this, that they're actual sequels to each other, like legitimate sequels. Like, they take off for it feels like the Saw franchise, where like they kind of mesh together, but like it takes, like, they actually, like, are creating some sort of a larger narrative, and they're insane. Don't get me wrong, but I'm just having a really fun time. And I said this to Jamie, like, I need to watch more Michael Myers movies, the Halloween movies. But like, Freddy is my favorite villain. But this Friday the 13th franchise, I think, is, like, truly fun. And I think I like the Friday the 13th movies better. Even the bad ones are a good time. Like, I didn't really like 3 or 5, but I still had a good time. Anyway, we'll talk more about that. But I just need to share my experience a little bit.
Well, I think I saw a list on the streaming services that that in August, in the month of August, these are all the movies that are coming out. I feel like the Nightmare on Elm Street, all of them are are available now on Max.
Yeah, they are.
Okay. Yes.
Because we were also deciding the other night to watch Jason Lives, or we're still going through all the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, and we're up to number 4. And I saw it was on Max, so we'll get back to that. But I'm just having too much fun with Jason right now.
I mean, that's fine. And then you got to get to Freddy versus Jason, and then
what? Well, that's the goal. The goal.
Okay.
I've never seen it before. The goal is the goal is to get to Freddy versus Jason, having seen everything.
Yeah. Yes. That is going to be a time.
I want to have full Jason and Freddy context by the time we get to them fighting each other. It's important to me.
Oh, you're going to have such a good time. Can't wait.
It's like countdown to the fight, you know?
Yes. Or final countdown, if you will.
I forgot that I also watched something else.
Oh, yeah.
I rewatched Scary Movie 2.
Yes.
Because I forget why. Oh, I was listening to an episode of the podcast Horror Queers. I had gone like way back in their back catalog and like downloaded a bunch of episodes of movies that like I know I've seen a really long time ago, and I listened to the whole episode, or I almost finished it, and I was like, I really just want to watch this movie right now. Like, it just sounds so absurd in exactly the way that I remember. And it truly, I mean, again, definitely offensive, but like it really goes out of its way to offend everyone. Like everyone is a target, which I think is funny. And like this movie would never be made right now. But one of my favorite lines of this movie is like a skeleton coming down the hallway. And Cindy's like running, like Anna Faris is like running away and like screaming, and Brenda, her friend, is like trying not to see her. And then they like come back up, and she's like, "Oh my God, what is it?" And she turns around and sees a skeleton. She's like, "Is this what you're afraid of? It's bones!" And I can only think about her yelling, like, "Why are you afraid of bones?" And it's just so funny. Just for that scene alone, the whole movie was worth rewatching.
Absolutely. I mean, Regina Hall, like, is just
she's so good. She's so good.
Funny. Yes. That is like a staple. Brenda is a staple character.
Yes.
Like, just for her career and just like horror movie catalog in general, like, absolutely.
So good.
And now I want to sing Them Bones song just because of that.
Them bones.
Them bones.
Fantastic. Well, I briefly mentioned this last episode, but I just want to reiterate Last Call on HBO, the true crime doc about a killer in the 90s that he apparently was going to gay bars in New York City and like finding people and offing them. It's a 4-part series and it is incredible. I think it's an incredible watch. If you are in a true crime mood, watch Last Call on on Max. But also, guys, 'tis the season because I went to my first Spirit Halloween store on today.
Wait, like an open one?
An open one in Lincoln, Nebraska, guys. There is a Spirit Halloween that is open.
That's amazing.
Shout out to you, Lincoln. You're doing great.
Nebraska, I love ya, in the words of Lady Gaga. But it on this day, August the 7th, a Spirit Halloween was open. Memorialize it, because I didn't think it would be, but yeah, went in, bought some stuff, and it was a great time. Literally just was excited for the season to start. So if you're Spirit Halloween, it might be open. You guys check wherever you are. You could be getting stuff early.
So today I entered some contests on Spirit Halloween's website to win like money or whatnot, but I signed up and I got a 20% discount. And I went on their site today and I ordered the Funko that I wanted from them.
Yay!
I ordered the Sam Funko for 20% off that has the felt actual suit that he's wearing. So I got the discount. I really wanted it. I didn't want to chance it. To add to my, I collect the Sam Funkos. From Trick or Treat. So hopefully I'll get that in the mail and be able to show it to everybody on the YouTube channels.
Yes, absolutely. What a great... I can't wait to watch Trick or Treat again during the season, because that is definitely now in my rotation of things. It's just so...
Yeah, I'm so happy.
So good.
Yeah,
yes.
It gets you in the spirit.
It does, immediately.
In the spirit Halloween.
Ooh. Okay, so let's do what we came here to do and talk to me. So we need a 2-minute plot summary. Who's gonna do it, guys?
What's the plot?
I'm happy to do it, but I know that you just saw it today, right, Nikisha?
No, I saw it a couple days ago, and I also did the plot summary for Sinister last time.
Okay. All right, I'll do it. Wow, I just got fully shamed.
Well, it was so funny because, we have 2 shows on the weekends, right? But randomly, again, Yay Lincoln, Nebraska had a 10:10 a.m. showing of Talk to Me on Saturday. So I just was like, let me just get
and
up
then
and
you
go.
had to do Hamilton?
And then I did Hamilton.
Oh, wow.
A lot of feelings.
It's a lot of different emotions happening.
Yeah.
But I was glad I went.
All right.
Okay.
Producer Brian, I have 2 minutes on the clock for you to give us the full plot summary of Talk to Me.
Sure.
Are you ready? Are you prepared?
I think so.
Are you ready to talk to me?
I'm ready to talk to you.
All right. Ready, set, go.
Okay. Talk to Me takes place in Australia. It's about a teenage girl named Mia who is 2 years removed from losing her mother. And so it's her Remembrance Day. She has a best friend as well as her best friend's little brother. She's really become a part of their family. Always has been, but since the mother passed away, she's really been there for her. The family's been there for her. She has a strained relationship with her father since her mother passed away. They are very separate from each other. And Mia's also kind of a little bit of the black sheep around like the group of friends for whatever reason. But one of the friends invites them to a party, and Mia basically sees that they have this embalmed hand. And when you shake the embalmed hand and say, "Talk to me," essentially you can see a dead person appears to you, and then if you say, "I let you in," the actual spirit takes over your body, but you only have 90 seconds to kind of play around with it. Then you have to blow out the candle that was lit and let go. People are around you to do that. So all the friends do this, and they're having an amazing time. It's kind of like a drug where they just keep going in. It's incredible. And then the Mia's friend's little brother wants to do it. He won't let him do it. The sister won't let him do it, but Mia's like, that's fine. There's a big fight, and then he does it, but he sees Mia's mom, and he stays in there longer than 2 minutes because things go crazy, and he basically like beats himself to a bloody pulp. He's in the hospital. Mia starts to slowly go a little mad trying to get in touch with her mom again. She starts hearing voices all around her. She sees her mom. Her mom is kind of taking over, or something is taking over. She can't see reality from real life. And they try to save the brother who's still trapped. I'm going to keep going. Who is still trapped kind of in the own body. There are a lot of rules about the hand that we'll talk about. But in the end, Mia finds out that her mother actually killed herself, and the father was kind of helpless, and the father was keeping the secret. Mia, in a fit of kind of not knowing what's real and what is fake, stabs her father, and then goes to the hospital and basically abducts Riley, the younger brother, and wants to put him out of his misery. And as she's pushing him into the street, and we're going to talk about this moment and what we all thought about this moment, she wakes up in the hospital, and she sees Riley and the family leaving. She sees her dad leaving the hospital. She's kind of all over the place, doesn't know what's happening, and then all of a sudden the lights flicker and go out, and she sees a light in the distance, and she goes to it, and then she appears in front of somebody else who said, "Talk to me," and she died, and now she is that entity that they're seeing. And then the movie, the guy says, "I let you in," and the movie ends. I just got goosebumps just explaining it. I know I went over. There's so much more to it, like the dead kangaroo at the beginning, the rules. There's a whole lot more. Toe sucking. But
of course,
that's Talk to Me.
Yes, good job.
And that's the plot.
Great.
I feel like Brian should continue.
I know. Well, we'll
Is this
continue
now
on then.
a producer job?
What? Doing the...
Oh, that's
summary?
not even what I was referencing. I was saying you should continue with your likes and gripes first. But do you want it to be a producer job?
I don't
I'm
know.
happy to relinquish that over to you.
All right. We'll take that offline.
We'll table that for right now.
We'll think about that.
Put that on the
think
back
about
burner. What is another way to say that?
Fantastical. Well, yeah, let's get into it. Our first segment of likes and gripes.
And now our likes and gripes.
So, yeah, I guess, Brian, if you want to continue on with your likes and gripes of everything, I mean, there's so much nuance in this movie. So if you want to continue on talking about that,
Sure.
Please feel free.
Yeah, I'm happy to. I loved this movie. I'll just straight up talk out loud. Like, I loved this movie. This is my top 2 horror movies of the year so far. It's a toss-up between this and Evil Dead Rise. for different reasons, which is why they can kind of go back and forth. And in third place, our girl Megan. Mithrigan at number 3. But I love this movie, and there are many reasons why I did. I think it's an exceptionally made movie, and I think that it is just really well structured. Could I have used 10 more minutes to explain some things? Maybe, but I enjoyed kind of the ambiguousness of some of the ending and the middle. It never was slow for me. Also, Jamie and I saw this early. Jamie and I saw this a week before it came out at an A24 event.
Shout out to A24.
Shout out to A24's Letterboxd for putting that together. And we were there with a group of people who were like revving to see this movie. Like the energy was super palpable in that room. There were no trailers. It just started with the movie, and you get that
cool.
whole opening scene with the brothers, looking for coal and then him stabbing himself in the face. Like that just like really got us all like amped for what we were about to see. So I thought that this movie was really well acted to start. I thought that Sophie Wilde, I cannot wait to see her in 1,000 million more movies. I just thought she knocked this out of the park. Even if you think, I think a lot of the beats of this movie were pretty predictable. Like, she's gonna go a little mad, this, but like, she did it so naturally and so believably that like it didn't feel forced. Therefore, I didn't care that I kind of knew it was gonna happen in some places. I love that there was no real exposition to this movie. They kind of just like jump into it. There is a little bit where she's like, it's my mother's Remembrance Day. Like, you're going to take me out, or, like there is like little pieces of that. But I feel like there was like that little like rules before they shook the hand the first time. But I like that. I like how funny this movie was. I thought that like with the kissing of the dog and even the scare and the creepiness of like sucking the foot and all of that, like it kind of blended that comedy and that horror really nicely. I thought the sound design in this was spectacular. I thought that even though it had familiar themes and plots like grief, like addiction, like with the obsession of bringing somebody back, how to handle grief, but kind of wasn't looking to handle grief, and then it kind of had to. I thought this was a brand new, exciting way to show that, and I appreciated that. I thought a lot of the plot points were fascinating, and we can get more into that a little bit later. But one of the ideas that I loved was that it was they talk in the movie about how if you go over 90 seconds, which Mia does and then Riley does, it kind of stays with you. But Riley went over for like almost up to 2 minutes, where she only went over by a couple of seconds. So he immediately gets more possessed and incapacitated than she does. And they talk about how the ghosts inside of you, the possessors, try to get you to kill yourself so they can kind of like take you over. And I like that because Riley was put into a coma on purpose, that he wasn't trying to kill himself. Therefore, they make that comment where like the longer you wait it out, the more they dissipate. Yeah. And I like that was kind of worked into it, even though he wakes up every once in a while and then he tries to kill himself. But I think it's like those are very intense moments. I liked all of that. I like at the end that the mom believes the daughter right off the bat. Like when she's like, you have to be careful. Like, what are you talking about? Like, no, like get him out of there or whatever it is. I like, even though you kind of knew when Riley sits down and shakes the hand, he's going to see her mom. It was still so well acted for me that like it didn't matter. Like Riley seeing her and like having that recognition and not knowing what to do, Mia knowing what he sees but still asking what he sees. I also like that when Mia does the hand for the first time with Riley there, she says something about the man standing behind you and he'll get you. And like in the end, it's like that man that kind of took over his body that Mia could see. I needed closed captions for a little bit because it took me a while.
The accents.
It took me a while. I forgot that this was going to be Australian. I just wasn't ready for it.
Hugh Jackman.
Australian.
Didgeridoo.
Yeah.
Obsessed.
I love that she dreamed that the comment about dreaming that she can't see her own reflection and then it comes true in the hospital. I also want to talk more about what you think that hospital scene at the end meant. I like that her mother tries to convince her to push Riley into the road at the end. I
have a question about that. Sorry, since you brought that up. So, are we to believe that was really her mom and not like a demon disguised as her mom trying to? Because I mean, I know in the beginning, like when she does see her mom and her mom warns Mia of like the father not being the father and it being like a demon, and so you're like, okay, she's on her side. But to go to the extreme of being like, put Riley out of his misery, like, do you think that it still came from like her mom?
I don't.
I
Okay.
don't.
Okay.
Because there's wasn't there a comment about like that they're not always honest and they try to trick you?
Yes.
Right. Okay.
So I just assumed that like either that wasn't really her or like, you know, once they've gone beyond that, like, you know, all hell breaks loose.
Right. Then everything is just like, okay. I just wanted to make sure, because at first I was like, well, at the beginning it does seem like the spirit that looks like her mom is like trying to help her or comfort her in whatever case that may be. But then at the end it's like, oh wait, is that just like a demon that's pretending?
I think that was like intentional to mess with her.
Yeah. And then the last things I'll mention is some of the images in this movie are just absolutely gorgeous, and the one I think about is at the end where it's her silhouette of her face with the light behind her at the very end before she sees the candlelight. Like, I thought that was incredible. I think this movie treats the audience with a great deal of respect. I think that it doesn't feel like a boomer or a Gen Zer, a boomer or like a millennial writing for Gen Z. It feels, even though it feels very lived in and real, even if that's not the case. I loved the kangaroo at the beginning because a lot of movies just put in like dead animals at the beginning, or they hit them dead animals with a car just to convey like, you don't know what's coming, like just to put you at ease, like to not put you at ease, to pull you out of that comfort level. But I like in this movie that it actually came back thematically. Like, could she put something out of its misery? And whether she's able to or not, and we'll talk more about that in the end as well. And then the last thing that I will mention in terms of my likes with this movie is Mia starts this movie wearing yellow clothes. Everyone around her is kind of in like black and white or blues or grays. She's the one that stands out with that vibrant color. As she goes a little crazier, her yellow gets more faded in the clothes that she wears, and she just ends up in that white tank top and like black pants. So it's almost like you're watching the life get drained out of her. And I thought that was just a really great production choice. And again, we'll talk about the end sequence, but like, I really like that, like, she sees the dad leaving, her friends leaving, the people, the living can't see her, and all of that, which I think is fascinating. And then I really only had 2 gripes with this movie on first viewing. The first one is that the end is a little fast. It kind of like goes from 0 to 60 in the last like 10-15 minutes. I believe that there's supposed to be like a 20-minute extra cut of this movie that may fill some of that in. I don't think it felt fast while watching it in the moment, but now thinking back to it, I got enough information to keep me thinking about this movie for a while. So I'm kind of torn on that being a gripe or a like, but I put it in the gripes just cause. And I the one real gripe I have with this movie is I didn't like the editing of her killing her father sequence. I think that sequence was too predictable. You like, I think it could have been edited in a way that it's a surprise that was her father, but like with her father banging on the door, them showing the scissor on the floor, you knowing how horror movies work. you just knew that the dad was going to burst in. She was going to stab and be like, oh no, what did I do? Because she thought it was the mother. Like, you knew that was going to happen. While it was still like intense and scary, I actually think that undercut a lot of the tension of that sequence. And I think us seeing it from her perspective the whole time would be a little bit more effective as an audience member. However, that's my biggest gripe about that. But I will stop there. I'll open it up for whomever wants to go next. But I really enjoyed this movie quite a bit. Yeah, well, I do want to piggyback on your comment about the animals, because you're so right in the fact that when scenes like that show up of people like running over an animal or whatever the case may be, it has nothing to do with it. But what made me think of a movie that also incorporates that really well is Get Out, because that actually has a thematic connection, and it wasn't just like a jump scare, you know, as opposed to, what was it, all the deer and what, The Ring 2? Yeah. That like came out of nowhere. But this, it worked. I liked how they worked that back in, especially with the phrase of putting it out of its misery, and then her not being able to do it both times. A lot of things that you liked about the movie, Brian, I liked as well, so I don't have that much extra to say. The opening, I loved that it just set up everything so well of what we were kind of in for, without giving too much information at the beginning. We love rules here, and I really loved how clear the process was. Yes, of like, this is what you have to do, this is what you have to say, and here is the time limit, otherwise this is the consequence. Great. I don't need to know anything else outside of those things. Totally. One of my favorite scenes in this movie was the montage of all of the friends going with having a turn at the hand. I just thought that was beautifully shot. I also just really enjoyed the idea that the concept of this in general, of the hand in general, and these kids having access to the hand however they have access to the hand, because it really kind of shows like teens being a little bit desensitized to things, because to think like in 90s or like previous movies, to see a ghost or anything in general would be so jarring that you would be like, all right, I'm done with this. But the fact that it was just it was a game to them, and that it was something that they weren't thinking would lead to any dire consequence, because this is something that they're just doing on a random Saturday night. And they were filming it, like they were putting it on the internet. It wasn't like, you know, like a private seance. Like it was just like, it was just a part of their everyday like being. Yeah, which I thought that was just a really cool concept, that what sometimes the horror genre takes as like, this is the horror, they were just kind of like, this is what we do. Like, this is our thing, and we're inviting people to this, you know, little seance thing. You can believe it or not, but, you know, this is what we're doing. So I just really enjoyed that concept of that not really being the scary thing. I also love the dream sequence and the foot sucking sequence, mostly because that was a really good setup into really revving up, okay, now we don't know what is real and what is not, and so now you can't believe everything else that is going to happen after this, because in this moment now we know like what is real, what is not. The audience doesn't know, she doesn't know, so it's going to be a surprise whatever happens. Brian, I understand your gripe about the dad sequence, but I really enjoyed it. My mind didn't think, oh, she's going to kill him. I mean, it's obvious that is, you know, going to happen, but in that moment, I wasn't anticipating it, so I enjoyed it, if that makes sense. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I already asked a question about the mom and the demon, blah, blah, blah. So while you're looking for your next point, something that I wanted to say also about kind of the friend group, I really like that the boyfriend was kind of this religious character who like was very like straight arrow, didn't want to like do anything outside of what he was comfortable with. I actually think that added to a lot of added to the tension of, should Riley do it, should the girlfriend do it, like all of that stuff. I also think it really added to the tension of like, this is normal. And this is like the fact that you mentioned like they're just doing this on a Saturday night. It's not like drugs or anything like that where like he might be like, oh no, like this what would you consider potentially a conservative person was still doing this. And I think that added to that feeling of that. And then also it added a fascinating dynamic to, if we'll call it for just all purposes, like the love triangle of those three characters. Him being like, him having those ideals was fascinating.
Yeah, and I do want to go back to a point, Brian, that you made about the comedy aspect of it, because I really think that Riley and Jade's mom was a really great comedic relief in her just like asking or trying to like trick the kids into like asking them what they're gonna do tonight, or being like, I know there's a party, where's the party at, let me know, and then them being like, we don't know what you're talking about, Mom. Like, there's no party. There's nothing happening, So I thought that that was really good comedic.
And that was a good juxtaposition between how their mom interacted with them versus like the continual phone calls with the dad, and like, I mean, like the rejected phone calls. Also, one of my favorite moments in this movie is when Mia is washing the dishes. And her dad is blurry in the background and she's clear in the foreground, but she keeps not being able to hear him to symbolize just how far apart they are. I thought that was absolutely so well done.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I liked. And I agree with you, Brian, about the ending being a little fast, because I would have liked to have had a clearer sense of at least how Riley got saved and Mia getting run over, because it just, I don't know, we get to the point where Mia is like wheeling Riley out, and then it's like stops, and it's like, well, how did she get into the street? Like, how did Riley get saved? Like, I would have liked to have seen that just to get a little bit more clarity, like the 20 seconds it would have taken to be like, oh, did Riley think that she was, or sorry, Mia think that she was pushing Riley, but like walked out into the scene herself and got hit by the car. I just would have liked to have seen a little bit more of that. So to your point about it kind of being fast in the last couple of sequences, but other than that, I think this was a genius concept and I really enjoyed my time. I thought that all of the things that were supposed to be gruesome and gory were gruesome and gory, especially when Riley was trying to pluck his eye out. That was just
so I did not expect this movie to be as gory as it ended up being.
Yes.
And Jamie and I gasped during the sequence where
I
Riley
squeezed Brian's hand the entire movie, and like, I was like, are you okay? Did I break your hand? Are you good?
Yes. I thought that was like, I mean, I love a good gore out of nowhere, and I think that it was just the perfect amount for this movie, to where it wasn't overkill, and it added to the story. It wasn't something that was just kind of out of the blue. I think that it was put in very
Agreed. And I think this movie balanced humor, gore, tension, and just unease in general really well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, those are my likes and gripes. Jamie?
I also agree with all of you. I think that this was just a really good movie. I was really looking forward to it, and all of my expectations were met. Like, it totally delivered on what I wanted and what I thought it would be. Maybe there was like a little bit of over hype when it came to like, this is the scariest movie you've ever seen in your life.
Oh,
like,
yeah,
I feel like there was a lot of that. But I mean, I do think that it was genuinely terrifying in moments, and like it also just was I think like everything that you're describing, like, is it there's something very refreshing about this movie, even though like I know I complained maybe like 2 weeks ago or 2 recordings ago that I was like, I'm done, not done, but like I'm so tired of, the elevated horror with like grief being used, but like shut that version of me up. I'll take this. Like this was great, but this was done very like exceptionally well.
That's what I was gonna say. It's different.
Like I think there's a difference when, because again, like it's I imagine, because this is becoming the norm of the horror genre, that now different ideas have to really stand out, but like this one really stood out for like all the right reasons. I'm trying to even think of things that like haven't already been said, but I wanted to say that, Brian, you mentioned the sound design, but you did not mention the slap. The slap when she slaps herself in the face, like as just like a kind of get your shit together. It's so jarringly loud that was a jump scare for me in the movie. It just like I just wasn't expecting her to like treat herself like that in that moment, but like it just, oh my god, I like felt it like in my butt. It was so it was terrifying.
Totally.
But I also like this definitely. I don't even know like what else I want to say about this movie. I love just how believable, despite like, you know, what it's about, but like it does feel really believable in terms of how young people are getting together and like interacting with one another. There's still themes that are coming up, like, you know, from movies that we were talking about in the beginning, in terms of like when you see teens in movies and how they're treating each other, and like there's a little bit of like shit talking in the beginning, but as soon as Mia starts to like lean into the experience with everyone else, it's like there's this peer pressure element. Like it feels like a teen movie.
Yeah.
But then it like obviously like flips the script and goes back to horror again. But like that felt very like nostalgia. Like that feels like Dazed and Confused. It feels like all these other movies where you get that you know, like young people coming together to like party vibe. But then it like you know, goes into something totally different, and it feels like it's kind of shocking. Again, like the ripping the eye out, and like knowing that he had seen the corner of the table, Riley, and was like getting ready to smash his whole face into the corner of the table, and then his sister just like puts her hand out instinctively so quickly, but then they still make contact. It was like, I was like, oh, she just like broke the fuck out of her hand. He has got to be unconscious at this point, like hopefully. But like that contact was like, I was like, oh my god, this is like all terrible. But like again, I'm just like, gimme, I want
absolutely.
more. But I'm torn with the dad stabbing scene, because I also think like, I think if it was edited slightly differently, it would have been more of a shock. I think because there were already like two big shocking things to me between like the slap and like the Riley scene, I was expecting another like kind of same degree of like intensity, and I don't think that delivered in the same way, even though I still was like, ugh, I was like cringing in that moment. I was like, don't do it, girl. Like, get it together.
Get it together.
But yeah, it's also like really fascinating. I don't know if it's a gripe necessarily, but I think it kind of goes into my Skulls score a little bit, where like she's so overcome by grief that she's having a hard time not only being unable to differentiate between what's reality and what is not, but more so that she doesn't realize that she's being manipulated, and that I feel like is a little bit surprising. But again, I'm that's me speaking as a person who like isn't experiencing grief, has not like lost their mother, and so like I can't speak to if I would be able to pick up on all of that. But I do feel like there's like a point where it's just like, you know, why are you not kind of scrutinizing this a little bit more? It all seems a little too convenient, mostly with the like when her mom is like, we'll take care of Riley, and like at the end, which I think I guess you know also speaks to like why the end happens the way it does. But like she does also see that horrifying scene of Riley in like the underworld, which is also like very terrifying.
That was the slap, Riley beating himself up, like hurting himself, and that quick shot of like Riley being like caressed and mutilated. It was like it was
ripped apart.
It was like sexy and horrifying all at the same time. Like it looked like a demon orgy, but it also was like very violent and brutal.
It was like
Yeah.
Matrix orgy.
Yeah, whoa. Let's not compare anything to
No,
that
it's just like
Matrix
this, like
orgy.
it was like writhing bodies, but like with the intention of like trying to like get inside
Like rip
of
him apart. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like were they trying
absolutely.
to take a piece for themselves, or were they trying to all get inside of him?
I mean, it looked like
Or
both.
both.
Question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that really got me too. Something else that I didn't mention before that I do want to talk about is and maybe I'm totally wrong, but it seemed like they used practical effects for the kangaroo, the like dying kangaroo, as opposed to CG. And I really appreciated that. I feel like when you use CG in instances like this, it's just not believable. And I appreciated that. Or it's just
I feel like
spectacular
most of this I feel like was done practically. Like there
I'm glad.
wasn't like a lot of, at least that I know this. I could be wrong, but like I think that's something that the filmmakers, like that's part of their thing. So after we watched this, I was like Googling them because I had never watched them on YouTube. I think their YouTube channel name is Raka Raka.
Okay.
And so I was just like, I was looking at some of their videos. They're all like very silly and like kind of
They're
absurd,
wild.
but they have like wild effects in them. So it's funny that like, I mean, it's not funny. Like they're obviously very talented and skilled. And so like, it is really incredible that like, you know, they have these talents and then like applied them in this. So I appreciate like their perspective and the way that they do things, and I'm excited for like whatever future things they continue to make, because like obviously this was just so successful, and like they really, and some of the things that like I saw in some interviews was that they had turned down some other like larger studios because of the feedback, or like not the feedback but the changes and stuff that the studios had wanted them to make, including casting somebody else other than Sophie Wilde, and they were like, no, like we're not compromising on that. So like that's why they didn't get picked up until they got picked up by A24. But like I'm again very glad that they stuck to their guns, and like, you know, they knew what they wanted, and they like had a vision, and then they were very patient to like collaborate with somebody or a studio that was going to align with their vision. And like all of that to say, I really enjoyed this movie.
Yeah, I mean that's so great too, and also like give other actors and actresses a chance, you know, to shine, because you just never know. And it I mean, she was definitely effective. So
Brian, and like you don't
say?
always need a big name to effectively market a movie, because this movie I think has been very effectively marketed. Like you know, like A24. I mean, A24 also knows what they're doing. But again, it's like, you can, like, you don't have to rely on certain tricks of the trade in order for people to go see your movie. Also, again, horror movies make money. And I don't know why studios, like, seem to forget this, like, consistent piece of data across, like, all, like, they always make money. Make more horror, it will always make money.
You have an audience, a built-in audience. Just say it's horror. People
Take
are going
my
to show
money.
up.
I want horror. Take my money.
Yes. Me at Spirit Halloween. Take all my money.
Do you have a Spirit Halloween credit card that I can sign up for?
You know,
I'm
just put some stuff on layaway so when I'm off the road, I can have my decorations for my house.
Oh my god.
Fantastical. Okay, well, yes, is that all everyone has to say about their likes and gripes before we move on?
For now. I'm sure some other stuff will come out.
But before we get to brains, I do want to ask two major questions to everybody.
Yeah.
Major question?
Major questions. What do you think happened in the car pushing scene at the end? And what do you think the hospital meant at the end? Because Jamie and I have had multiple conversations with different people, and everyone had a very different interpretation, which was very surprising to me. So I'm interested to hear what you think your interpretation is, and then I'd love to break down like what it could also mean.
So with the hospital scene, to me, it just felt like her having just an outer body experience of like moving through her own sense of purgatory, but like seeing that people have like, obviously Riley got better and he, you know, has moved on, and, you know, famously, like, timing in the purgatory world like is different than like real life timing. So I think like all of her realizing and all the stuff like that was just like her famously it's different. It's not gonna be the same. You're in purgatory, you know.
Yeah.
You think you're out for like a second and you're out for like, you know, however long. Because you're in the, what is it, the further into the further worlds. So
yes, into the further.
Yes. Into the unknown.
I was
but the further.
thinking the same exact thing. Like,
wait,
100%.
does anybody else, whenever they hear "talk to me," they think "talk to me, tell me your name"? No,
I don't know that song.
I do know that song, but that's not what I think about.
Oh, okay.
Wait, what do you think about?
Talk to Me from Bye Bye Birdie.
Don't know that either.
Oh,
dang.
Talk to me, baby, won't you talk to me?
Got it. I'm a terrible musical theater person. Revoke my card, my equity card. Yes. So yeah, you said what the other one was, the
like
car scene?
what happened in the road, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I want to know. I can't even think about what could have been like a reasonable explanation as to what happened. Like, I don't know. You guys tell me. Like, that's what I needed from the film.
Jamie,
to tell me what that was.
What I think happened at the end.
Oh yeah, all
with the push.
The push. We'll call it the push in the hospital.
Okay.
So I think that she made a conscious decision not to push Riley in, but at that point it was too late, and her friend did push her into traffic. Mm-hmm. But I can also see a world where maybe she like threw herself, perhaps realizing that like this wasn't going to stop until like
she ended things herself, just like the kangaroo thing. It's like she wasn't going to end Riley's life; she'll just end her life. But I agree with you, Jamie, on the friend push thing.
Yeah, especially because like I think she also has a very complicated relationship with death anyway, as a result of her mom's suicide and like learning that her mom commits suicide. But
Fair.
so I think she was pushed, and then in the hospital scene, I mean, I think like I don't know, maybe it's purgatory. I think also like time is just moving very rapidly in that moment, so I think she's like seeing what's happening around her like at a much faster trajectory of like Riley getting better, they're getting discharged from the hospital, her dad wasn't actually killed, like he survived the stabbing, and so like he recovered and then is like also being discharged from the hospital.
No, that's fair. What did you think, Brian?
Sure. So I think that all these could be totally right. Like, I don't know if like I haven't seen any interviews with them to if they ever explained it, which I'm not looking for. That doesn't interest me. But so I think that the push, she's bringing her down. The mother is whispering in her ear, like, do it, put him out of his misery. We'll take care of him. Well, whatever it is. She sees the old man in the chair. You know, she's there. And then there's the sister, the friend Jade is there, like running down the hill, and like, and so, but there's a specific shot of Mia taking her hands off of the wheelchair and the wheelchair not moving. So I personally think that Mia made the executive decision for herself that, like the kangaroo, she couldn't put Riley out of his misery. She couldn't do it. So that leaves you with two options. She throws herself into the road, whether it's a conscious decision because she just needs to stop this and put everyone else out of their misery by putting herself out of her misery, or like Riley was experiencing, the ghost kind of possessed her to throw herself in the road because they wanted her to die so that they can kind of take her body for themselves. the other option is that the friend actually pushes her into the road, which is a little bit more tragic in some ways because she made the conscious decision to like not kill the brother, and then the friend pushes her in. But what kind of life would she have had after that? You know, like in general. So I think it's one of those two things. But I personally like that it cuts to the inside of the car, and you kind of are jarring and don't know what happened. Then the hospital scene. When I first watched the movie, I definitely thought what Jamie said, that time just moves differently, and you know, we're in the future where the father has survived, because when Jade was at the house, she still felt the pulse and saw that the father was still breathing. So maybe the father survived and was being discharged at the same time that Riley got better, because as they mentioned, the longer that Riley like kept going out, the more the longer that he was like out of it and like wasn't trying to kill himself, the more that the ghost would kind of like go away. So maybe that's that aspect of it too. Also, our friend Kevin had this very interesting Kevin Broadwaysid. Kevin had this interesting theory where the dad was going into the elevator because he died and he was being taken to heaven or wherever you go through that elevator, and the friends were leaving through the door. So she was in this crossroads of life and like death, and so she was in this place like kind of like amongst them. I love that this movie's about shaking hands. This movie is about connections between people, like literal connections where she's shaking hands with the hand, or real life connections in terms of with her father, with everyone. So I love the first thing that makes her realize that something is wrong is that her fingers are all bent out of shape. I really like that. You know, maybe she's there among the living and among the dead, like almost like a tease to her because she can't like actually, you know, touch people or be with people or even see herself in the mirror. So I think that all of those are viable, interesting options, which to me makes the ending even more interesting, that it is a little bit holy, so that you can fill it in yourself, if you will. But I think both of you are right. You know what I mean? Like, I think everyone in this conversation is correct.
A little holy.
Yeah, it's a little holy.
A little holy.
Yeah,
filling yourself.
But yeah, and I the last shot is great with the candle. I also like in this. I've something I forgot to mention. I like in the second half of the movie, they think they could fix everything by like holding the candle then blowing it out. Like I kind of like that because it just showed how at the end of their rope they were, but they still believed in the hand, if you will. But yeah, I'm just curious of how you thought the ending was, and that was a good comment. I like hearing what you thought.
Yeah, that is a good way to see it. That it can be interpreted in a million different ways, but it's still, even without it, it all still makes sense, and you're still invested in what's happening. And then having the final shot of her at the end of the hand is just always golden. So, fantastic. Well, let's move to our next section.
We should give this movie a hand.
Oh. Just one hand.
One hand.
However they bent it for the A24.
Yeah. Oh.
Yes.
Oh yeah. I had a lot of fun doing that, but now
it's a fun time. You can like see us on for the 24.
You can see
it's backwards.
Yeah.
But it's backwards. Here's a 2. Here's your 2.
Got it. Yay! Jamie did it. Hand for Jamie.
Let's give her a hand.
Give her a hand. Fantastical. Well, let's get into our next section, which is brains.
Brains.
Tasty.
Delicious.
So, delicious. So we
You
talked
sounded
a lot.
Australian for a second.
I
Sar.
did.
Yeah.
Sar. You know.
Nar.
No. That's it. That is a constant thing.
I'm surprised
that
it's
is
taken.
randomly
How
said.
long has this recording been so far? And
For like an
that
hour.
Razor
And
blades.
nobody said nar.
Razor blades.
I have to say, and I wish I have one of the stage managers in Hamilton has a fantastic Australian accent that he brings out every now and then, and it's a very tough accent, but he does it such justice. So in all that, we always are just saying "nar" to each other all the time. So. Nar. Okay, well, we're talking about brains now. So we briefly discussed grief and just how this movie executes it very well. So I just have a question about grief in general, and why do you think some people believe that doing something seemingly unsafe is a good coping mechanism for grief? In this instance, Mia specifically wants to go and do this thing with her friends with a hand because it's her mother's remembrance, and she kind of wants to do this to forget about it, you know, and just have something that's a different experience. And it just made me think about when people just do things that might not be safe or that they might not have done otherwise because they're dealing with grief. So can you just kind of talk about why that might be?
Yeah. I mean, I also think for her specifically, maybe it wasn't about a distraction. Maybe she like hoped that she would actually see her mom.
Oh, that's fair. Yes.
But I also like one thing that it makes me think of is like there's like so many different reactions and responses to grief, and grief doesn't have a timeline. So I also wondered, like, is there a world where, you know, she is engaging in like more reckless behavior because like the way that she's like responding to the loss of her mom, she's like feeling like, well, what's the point of like living kind of thoughts, like maybe not like suicidal thoughts of like wanting to die, but like more passively being like, well, I don't really care about like the value of my life kind of thing. And so like doing increasingly risky things as a result. And that's not like, again, like there's so many different responses to grief. This is just like one interpretation. Like, you know, there's all kinds of other like reactions that people have, like crying, not crying, anger, you know, like relief, whatever. Like there's no wrong way to feel.
Or
but,
to
like,
eat a Reese's.
What?
There's no wrong way to eat a Reese's.
Is that a thing?
It is a thing.
Yeah,
oh, I've never heard that before.
They used to have those commercials like in the early 2000s, like there's no wrong way to eat a Reese's, and like it would be like Dracula, like putting two like teeth in it, or like you know. Anyway, that was.
I'm with you.
I mean,
I remember that.
You probably don't want to eat it with the wrapper. That seems like the wrong way to eat it. So.
Very fair.
Possibly, yeah. Maybe so. The commercial was wrong.
Yes, but yes, Jamie, keep going with your.
No, that's it. That's all I have. My brain really short-circuited with your Reese's ad.
Which, this is going to be so random, that just reminded me of when I was younger, the way I used to eat a Reese's was to push the middle part outside of the Reese's.
Oh, really?
Eat it and then have like, it was like a little donut because there was a hole, and then I would eat the rest of it.
I love that.
So I just like eat the most peanut butter part first out of the middle, and then
interesting. I used to bite the top off and then eat the peanut butter out and then eat the
rest of it,
the chocolate. There's no wrong way to eat a Reese's.
There's no wrong way,
except for the wrapper. Don't eat the wrapper,
as we now know.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, in you talking about that, Jamie, just about how she's dealing with the grief, it made me think about, oh, well, does it have to do with her kind of not knowing how her mother died, and is that like kind of a way that causes her to deal with her grief in a different way, which leads me to Brian had a question about that, like not knowing like what happened with her mom because of the dad not saying that. Can you ask that question, Brian, please?
Oh yeah, just curious, like I wanted to talk a little bit about like withholding information from people and how that one person may think that information is helping the other person, or the lack of that information is helping, versus what it's actually doing. Obviously, it's very contextual, but was curious about that. Also, how that information butts up against your expectations versus reality, because she was clearly missing all of the signals of depression where her dad probably wasn't, because her memory of her mother is this happy-go-lucky person.
Right.
So that's more of a amalgamation of thoughts that I'd love to discuss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, for one, like, someone can present as a happy person and still be, like, severely depressed or anxious.
Yes.
Yeah.
As, like, I think folks encounter that in a lot of ways, like, not only personally, but I think also, like, with celebrities and things like that. And you know, it's disclosed that, like, somebody commit suicide, but, like, they otherwise had presented as, like, a happy, like, comedic personality and things like that, and it really shocks people, and I think reinforces this idea that, like, oh, that, like, this, something about this doesn't make sense, that, like, people who are chronically depressed have to, like, look depressed, look sad,
Right, like there's only one way to be depressed.
which is not true. So so I think, like, that's interesting, just because, like, her perception of her mom might not align with, like, the reality of what happened to her mom. She's also, like, a young person, so, like, how is that influencing her? Like, her brain's not fully formed yet, so, like, her perception of things could also be skewed because of that. But ultimately, like, in terms of your question about, like, you know, is it, what do we think about this decision to withhold information? Like, that's a really hard question. Again, I'm not a parent, so I don't yet know what it's like for, like, to have to communicate something to my child that, like, is a really difficult conversation, but also concept to explain. And also, like, the child is going through their own, like, significant mental health crisis. So, like, what to say, when to say it, all of that stuff. Also, like, the father himself is also going through this grief. He's, we're to assume, feeling awful and guilty for, like, not being quick enough, and feeling like he didn't intervene and, like, didn't do enough. So, like, he's probably stuck in his own shit as well. And I think that's part of what, like, continues to feed into this divide between the two of them. And it's just, like, that's just really hard and really sad. And, like, I don't know if they ever kind of address whether or not they were in individual therapy or, like, family therapy together. But, like, I think that there's a lot of value in, like, you know, A, talk to a therapist about how to communicate this to your child. B, like, is there a way to do this in, like, family therapy in a way? And I say this also, like, I'm not a family therapist, so this could be, like, maybe a bad suggestion, but, like, a thought is, like, is there value in having the family therapist present, like, for this conversation, so that, like, you know, there's support for both of them in that space. If like, if revealing this information. So yeah, I, like, personally, as not a therapist, I don't like the idea of withholding this information. I just feel like there's something, like, in the way that she's not able to grieve that. She has just, like, an entirely different perception of the situation. And what was it, like, 2 years had passed, and then learning this new information that's, like, that then fundamentally changes what you believe, just feels like not a very thoughtful move. But again, it's like, I don't think that he was thinking about things super thoughtfully. He was dealing with his own shit, and probably thought it was for the best to then take the brunt of all of that, because now he is like the enemy, so to speak. Like, she's also pissed at her dad for not doing enough, and, like, blames her dad. So, like, there's so much within this relationship dynamic that, like, connects back to the grief. But, like, you know, getting this information, obviously, at this time, because of all the spooky things, isn't great. But, like, I think even without the spooky elements, this would have been just, like, such a huge blow to their relationship, a betrayal. Like, that's, like, so much trust that's lost and broken in like, such an intense reveal at such a later point, that I feel like, I don't know, personally, I was like, oh, I wish that this wasn't happening right now.
Yeah, that leads me to another just random question, because, of course, Mia's old enough to be able to receive that information that her mother was depressed and that's what caused her to commit suicide. Like she's old enough to understand those concepts, right? Of like mental health. So
Sure.
But then that makes me think of like if it was a younger person, you know, like are there books that are out there that talk about mental health in a way that like a child could understand it? Or like do you think like if you think there is an age limit, like they are too young, maybe I'll tell them when they get older and they can understand the concept of mental health. So like now I'll keep this from them at an earlier age until they're able to really understand what happened. I don't know how you feel about that.
For one, there's definitely books that talk about like a lot of like, you know, quote, serious topics, but in a way where like a child can understand it. But I think of it more of like, can you in a way that like both a child would understand and that you're not like traumatizing them, can you relay information in like a sensitive, like developmentally appropriate way, but like you keep the door open to revisit this conversation at a later point where like they have a greater understanding of like death and loss and grief. But like, you know, it's not like very young children don't experience loss. How do you explain to a very young child, like if it is like a close family member or even like a grandparent, like, you know, like I lost my grandparents when I was a kid. So and I honestly can't remember like what that conversation looked like, but I do remember going to my grandmother's funeral when I was like definitely, I had to have been like under 8 years old. Like I think I was pretty young, but like I remember it. So like I know that somebody had to talk to me about that and like explain to me what that situation was and like being physically present for that. I can't remember like, you know, what that conversation looked like, but like that was my first encounter with death as a very young child. Like I never had a pet growing up, so like that wasn't a conversation that I had around like, oh, your goldfish is dead, like you know, it's going to goldfish heaven or like whatever the ways that people like explain these things. But like, you know, like that's that type of situation is like why I think about like, oh, how would you communicate this in a way that like makes sense based on like, you know, the age that they're at, what concepts they can understand. Because like even the idea of someone like not returning for like a very young child, I feel like that's really confusing. And like how are you explaining that concept to a child where it's like, no, like, you know, mommy's been here every day and like now she's just not here, like I don't what like that doesn't they wouldn't even communicate it in that way. That's how I'm communicating it to a 30-something-year-old. But like it's just like I feel like that's a really hard thing. Again, like for like developmentally, like, I mean, I think at talking age, they probably have more of an understanding of like, you know, in like babies when you do like hide and seek and like they're or peekaboo rather, and it's like, oh, like if you're not there, they like think you're gone, like that that concept. Like at a certain point, like kids are then able to understand like even if you're like they could see that you're physically present. So like I feel like it's like continuing to add on to that and like these concepts that continue to grow more abstract over time. So like how
like
do
object permanence?
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
it. That's the
Thank
phrase.
you.
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Yeah, Brian, you've earned your therapist hat.
Woo!
Yeah.
I was like, I know there's a phrase, and I've heard the phrase before. That's it. Yes.
I couldn't even think of it anyway.
There's
but
no wrong way to be a therapist.
That is also not true.
Not at all.
But yeah, long story short, I think that like, you know, I think it's important to have these conversations because also like it's important for kids to have a space to like process these things. Like it's going to impact them, right? So like better to figure out like how to have the conversation and get the support that you need as like the adult relaying this information, and potentially also offering support to your child so that they can process it in like healthy ways.
Yeah. That makes it, and I like the phrase that you use, like leaving the door open, because like you're not going to tell a 3-year-old that, in addition to your
like
mother,
grandma died, then we'll never talk about this again.
Right? Or you're not going to say grandma died by suicide. Like, there.
Also, yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, explain the concept, but then later on down the line, when they can comprehend like exactly what happened, like don't keep that from them. You know, let them know. Let's the real deal is. Being open and honest, concepts.
Yeah, secrets. But like also like every family has secrets. And I don't necessarily mean like this kind, but like
yes.
Like every family has like rules and like things like that are unique to each family. And so like there are some families that like aren't discussing these things and like
yes.
do like and that's just like the norm. So I also like don't want to say that like your family unit is wrong and bad if
for
that's,
sure
like, part of the the norms and like the culture that you have with just specifically within your family unit. But I think like it's as I always say, like context matters. So like whatever works within the norms and rules and customs within your family unit, like hopefully it's positive and
healthy. Yeah. Right. Fantastic. Well, I think that's all that I have. That was a good brains
some
section.
Yummy brains.
Yummy brains. Fantastic. Should we rotten tomatin then?
Let's rotten tomatin it.
Tomatin.
It's the Rotten Tomatoes game.
You say tomatin, I say tomatin.
So what do you think this has on Rotten Tomatoes?
87.
92.
Ooh, baby.
All right, very interesting. The Rotten Tomatoes score is a 94%.
Aye.
And the audience score is an 82%.
Ooh.
Okay.
The critics' consensus is, with a gripping story and impressive practical effects, Talk to Me spins a terrifyingly creepy 21st century horror yarn built on classic foundations. I think that's a solid description of this movie.
Absolutely.
And then the audience says, Talk to Me has a fright-filled, fast-paced, and often unpredictable story that'll keep you on the edge of your seat from start to finish. Yeah. I think those are pretty accurate, both of them.
Fast pace, yeah.
Yeah.
That's
good.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Okay. Let's get to 4 S's. Okay.
Yes.
Skull, Scare, Shakes, and Suggestions. The Talking Horrors 4 S's.
The 4 S's are Skulls, Scares, Shakes, and Suggestions. Skulls is how this movie handles mental health and human behavior. Scares is how scary was it. And Shakes is how much you're going to remember this movie. Can you shake it off? And that is, again, all these are 1 through 10. So, Jamie, let's start with you. Let's start with your Skulls, Scares, and Shakes. And then we'll do our suggestions when we're all done with our numbers.
Sure. I just changed mine, but I'm like on the fence. So I gave for Skulls, I put a 6 because like I mentioned in the beginning, I think that like it just seems more obvious that Mia is being manipulated and she's not like recognizing it. I also just part of me deducted points, but I'm like, is this also just teenagers being teenagers and like they're making stupid decisions and like that is just part of what they do. But this is where I give my opinion, so I don't care. It makes me mad, and that's why I did that. For Scares, I gave this a 7. I thought this movie was very like it's not the scariest movie I've ever seen in my entire life, but it was very scary and chilling, and I broke Brian's hand from squeezing it so hard. I was very scared throughout like the whole movie.
Yeah. Talk to me. I'll let you in.
Yeah.
I don't want it.
And then for Shakes, I'm giving this an 8. I'm still thinking about this movie. I'm still thinking about the ending of this movie. The ending is one of my favorite horror movie endings in a very long time. Yeah. I'm still thinking about it. It's probably giving me nightmares. But this movie is excellent, and like I would recommend it to everybody.
Nice.
Nikisha?
Skulls, I'm gonna give this a 7. I thought people were peopling for what this was in our modern day horror things, and I just liked how they dealt with grief, like we've said before. Scares, it was a 5 to me. It wasn't scary. The thing that was the most scary was the gore with Riley. So But other than that, it was just a good time to watch. I wasn't, I didn't have anybody's hand to grab and hold, but I wasn't like jumping up, and yeah. So 5 for me. And then Shakes, I'm going to give this a 7 because I am also still thinking about it a lot. And I think that the ending was also just stellar, man.
Yeah. I'm also giving it a 7 for Skulls. I think people are peopling for the most part. And I think that her descent into madness was pretty well done. I'm giving this a 6 for Scares. It was scary. And then for Shakes, I'm giving this an 8.5.
Nice.
I'm only because I've seen it once. I'm giving it the 0.5 because it could really go 9 or stay at 8. But I'm thinking about it, like we all said, like a lot, and I'm suggesting it to people. I'm getting excited for people to see it. But I think that this is, and again, this is one of my favorites of the year so far. And don't get me wrong, I think this is really good, and I think this will hold its own in 2022. Like, if this was a wide release in 2022, what we consider an excellent year for horror, like, this would hold its own, like, up in that top 10, no question. But because 2023, so far isn't as strong overall, statistically, as 2023 was. There's still a half year, more than a little bit less than a half year left. Like, this, I think that this is like gonna easily hold its own throughout the rest of the year. Cool. So let's go into suggestions. I'm gonna start. I picked a movie that also deals with reality versus not, deals with parents and stuff like that. I'm going with Mike Flanagan's Oculus.
Ooh, that's a really good one. Yes. I was trying to think of movies where, because the thing that sticks out in my brain about this particular movie is just that sequence of all of the kids having their turn at the hand. Mm-hmm. So, but I couldn't really think of anything besides like bodies as far as like teenagers just like together doing like crazy stuff.
That's not a bad one.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go with bodies.
Jamie?
I went with a film that deals with grief, having a hard time dealing with grief, and spooky things that kind of make you question reality. I went with The Night House.
Yes.
Great movie.
It's a house.
So good.
In the night.
In the nighttime. Wonderful. Okay, well, I guess that wraps up our episode of Talk to Me, Do Not Let Them In. You can follow us on all of the social medias. Talk to us on there, on the TikToks, on the Instagrams, on the Twitter, X, whatever's, at Talk Horror Pod, P-O-D. And Brian, where can they listen to us?
You can listen to us wherever you get your podcasts. So obviously YouTube, as was previously mentioned, but of course on things like Spotify and Apple Podcasts. We also would love for you to rate and review us there. 5 stars, please.
And thank you. I don't know. What should we end this episode with, guys?
They like you.
Ooh, that was really creepy. Oh,
yeah. The eyes, good. Everything. It was a great movie.
The eyes were great for everyone.
Yeah.
Yes. I dig it. Fantastic. Yeah. Well, thanks, guys. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.
Talk to me. Tell me your name.
That part.
Like it's all the same.